The 5th anniversary livestream put out a bunch of potential rewards, the majority arriving as login bonuses. But there are some that you have to get yourself. First off, we have a fresh free batch of summons. First, there's a special 10 summon with at least 5 5-star units. Then there'll be 5 free 10+1 summons with at least 1 5-star unit from each summon. Maybe you'll get a Neovision unit. I doubt it because the drop rate is back to 1%. The Slots to Chocobo event makes its return, and you can really tell how they've just lost all enthusiasm for the slots machine. Let me make this look better. Nope, still don't like this event. Next, they offer 3 free events, but we only got one of them. The player's voice summon lets you vote for 3 different prizes. There will be a second selection later, but we don't know the details about that yet. Regardless, one of them is a weekly 10+1 summon with at least 1 5-star unit from each summon, and the additional 1/10th Neovision summon ticket. This will last for 10 weeks, meaning if you perform each summon, you'll get at least 1 Neovision unit alongside 110 other guys. The second choice is a daily free 5 summon that spans for 20 days. The summoning pool will only consist of 4-star units or rare, meaning you'll probably get 100 4-star units if you are persistent. This is essentially a summoning pool for Lapis, with 1 go throughout 14 days, and at worst you'll walk away with 5,000 Lapis at the end. Personally, I'm going for the weekly 10+1 summon, but comment below if you think I'm wrong and I'll just ignore you. Next, for the players who aren't playing but still watch my channel because, I don't know, weird guy Big Sword talks about pairs? There's a comeback bonus, which will get better for the longer you haven't played the game. You can expect Neovision units, a boatload of summoning tickets, and the materials to upgrade them quickly. However, you won't actually get them until the campaign period ends, and you're ineligible if you haven't dropped the game for at least a month. So hopefully you didn't just go and re-download the game right this second. The Super Trust Moogle exchange has received a discount. Now you only need 90 tickets to get 1 Super Trust Moogle. Good thing I didn't actually use them, huh? They also have an option to pay 50 tickets for 50% Super Trust Moogle, which is a worse deal, but at least you can pair that with any other 50% Super Trust Moogles you have lying around for whatever reason. The guild limit's also been increased, but has anyone actually reached that number anyways? Dark Visions also receives an upgrade. We're introduced to a new weapon, the Dark Claymore, a powerful greatsword, and a new upgrade for Dark Ragnarok, turning into an even better sword. This isn't the last upgrade they'll receive either, but it's the best we'll get for now. They also had a bunch of surveys, and it was interesting to see the results. Apparently, the average player base consists of veterans, but you have to keep in mind that most beginners aren't incredibly likely to take the survey anyways. They might not have even been aware of it either. Here's another survey. What do you like most about Final Fantasy Brave Exvius? People really liked it for being Final Fantasy and the general battle system. The world itself is a runner-up, alongside collaborations and global original characters, which, to be fair, didn't have the best reputation because of screenshots like this. The next one asked for everyone's favorite Final Fantasy game. Personally, I haven't played any of them, not even Remake, but I have watched movies and played Super Smash Bros. I have to say, they really dropped the ball not bringing in that Mario character into Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. You can get a sense of 7, 15, and 6's popularity, though the same can't be said for 10 and Tactics. I wonder why. They also took a survey for collaborations. Nier took the top spot, followed by Marvel's Avengers, that's out of the blue, then Kingdom Hearts, Dragon Quest, and Trials of Mana. So I'm pretty sure we'll see those show up in War of Divisions eventually. Next, ranking the event quests. Collaborations were by far the largest pool, despite having less actual substance than story events, which took second place. Global original events were tied with Dark Visions, and we don't even know what the rest of the categories were. I assume one of these are intro quests. Nemesis. Series boss battles took an overwhelming majority of the votes, which makes sense, given that most people like Final Fantasy Brave Exvius for being Final Fantasy. Chamber of Arms was also very fun, at a time where battles were challenging enough to strike a balance between unit counts and effect juggling. Then there's Fallen, Indignant, and Vengeful, which, personally, I just row into one battle form, since they aren't too different from each other in gameplay. Wow, just look at how much junk they've given us! It takes a skilled player to find a treasure in the trash, and in a weird way, I guess it's part of the fun. Favorite Espers. It's hard to tell how players voted. Did they go for gameplay, or did they go for aesthetics? Regardless, I'm not too surprised by the top 4, though I admit I actually thought Carbuncle could be a dark horse in this competition. Favorite characters from each season. They really introduced a lot of characters since the game's conception, though actual characterization kinda fluctuates. It doesn't help that a lot of the side story quests are time-limited events, which really shaves off a good bit of potentially important details for each character. I like that they aren't using Cleome's proper sprite, though honestly, I would have made fun of it even if they actually used it in the first place. Finally, improvements. People are begging for actual content. Believe it or not, new units every week does not actually equate to content. Events are repetitive, and farming gets fairly dull. Unfortunately, most of the love for this game is derived from it being Final Fantasy, so new units from its larger franchises are very likely to be the game's lifeblood. Even I myself play for the units, more so than for the game. Second on the list, unit power creep. It's also a commonly cited problem, but there's no good way to solve it at this point. Units who utterly shatter the damage ceiling are praised to high heavens, while anyone who doesn't match that damage is absolutely slandered for being a few digits short. We're at a juncture where the developers can't actually make everyone happy with damage output. The best idea is to learn from supporters, introduce new concepts that expand the game's scope, rather than stretch it so thin that anyone can see the loose threads that barely keep the game together. If they want to take another direction, I think they could begin by capping unit damage limits, and instead of making bosses harder by increasing their health or damage, you make the battles more intense by bringing in new mechanics. But of course, this then runs the risk of another devastating pitfall. Create a problem, sell a solution, where they begin to create units that deliberately deal with specific mechanics. Striking this balance will be extraordinarily difficult, so another option is to focus on a different portion of the game, exploration perhaps. Other issues players cite are bugs and communication problems, and these really go without saying. The quizzes were also interesting, giving us a glimpse into the thoughts of the players as a majority. They love attackers, they're absolutely insane, everyone probably hates Aiden, the developers are insane, something miracle power. This last one's pretty interesting. I would have thought that the majority would prefer selecting a certain unit out of the gacha, but I'm glad that a lot of the players enjoy this infernal mechanic. Even I have to admit I get a sick amount of fun out of it, which isn't very healthy admittedly, but luckily I'm free to play. Clash of Wills. This is the new battle system that will involve morale mechanics. They introduce a morale gauge, a quote, evolving boss battle, and challenge options. The morale gauge is an interesting implementation, giving your characters more life as their morale rises and falls throughout the flow of the battle. The higher their morale, the better they'll perform. The lower it gets, the stronger the boss becomes. It's an excellent perspective, granting buffs to the boss rather than explicitly debuffing the player. Battles can potentially get intense at low morale scenarios, so I really have my hopes up for this mechanic. Bosses have a wide range of difficulty levels, which apparently increases the battle's complexity, and completing the highest can net you all the awards in one go. They also have challenge options to make a self-imposed challenge. While these don't net more awards, they do affect the scoring rate. I hope the difficulty actually reflects the challenge, though I certainly understand that players enjoy winning. I think the developers should introduce a fairly simple battle at its introduction. Play around with mechanics rather than actual difficulty, then gauge the player base's reactions and scale the difficulty in response. The ranking system takes some inspiration from the Dark Vision's format. It looks like burst damage will be as critical as ever, but I hope the other mechanics can shake things up. The first battle will occur in July, featuring the long-forgotten Morgana. It looks like they aim to create a rotation between Dark Visions and Clash of Wills. I'm cool with that, but I feel like some other players might not be. Your mileage may vary, I guess. But what are your rewards for fighting this battle? You might get an Obnixus Drop, which may give a literal unit, and then there's Omni Prisms and Vision Card materials, so I assume it'll come at a steep price. The second reward is Xenostone Shards, which can upgrade specific equipment from this event. These upgrades will be customization options. Some of these are fairly general, while other options are niche but potentially better. The real question is if you can revert the crown. I wouldn't want to be stuck with a permanent mistake. Now, to the units. We have a new character from Fundamental Forces, Louise. And wow, they really took a leap in the technological spectrum. Last time we left off, Yoshikiri was an expert ninja who had to use his skills in the entertainment industry because no one needed ninjas. And now we see the cybernetic suit, and yeah, you can see why no one wanted ninjas anymore. The Fundamental Forces storyline is taking all types of turns. Elena and Morgana seem like a simple fantasy fight, but with Yoshikiri struggles you get a sense of grounded realism. But then this character trailer just sweeps you off your feet. Now, it's not entirely out of left field. If we look back at the Season 2 characters, you've got a Knight of Grand Shout walking around with a 700-year-old mage, and a middle-aged man with a literal laser cannon, so something like this isn't too far-fetched. Anyways, she's a cybernetic warrior who's actually just a supporter and a debuffer in her armored form. Remove the helmet and activate those jet boosters and you get a magic damage dealer. Props to the design. We get diversity, we get technology, I'm such a big fan. She seems to dabble in fire damage, which is suited for the warrior of the Red Crystal. She'll be featured in the researcher arc of Fundamental Forces. Oh, a science whiz, that's cool. Her showcased abilities will certainly appeal to the majority of the player base. First, we have a support ability that grants everyone on your team a 50% killer buff. Just look at how many species it covers. Beasts, demons, humans, dragons, fairies, insects, plants, reapers, avians, aquatics, machines, and stone-type enemies. It also enables a second ability, maybe it's chaining. Fire Foam is another cool ability that's incredibly niche. It converts fire damage into health for your allies. But for true Brave Shift, we see morale-based abilities, which will come into play with the new battle style Clash of Wills. Other than their interplay of Clash of Wills, they seem to be fairly standard, which will let her see use outside of that specific game mode. They also talk about other details in the livestream, like apparently she has a 200% passive killer damage against all races, which is a bit much, I have to admit. Her offensive stats might be lowered to compensate, like we've seen before with our previous variants. She also has a very cool CG limit burst, but I'm sorry. What is this voice acting? Now I don't mean to make fun of her voice, but the volume is extraordinarily underwhelming. Words cannot describe the disappointment I felt, watching this laser cannon charge up, prepared to fire, and then I hear Crystal Fourth Cannon! And one of the softest voices to grace the game. Really, what a shocking discrepancy. That aside, they've announced a second Neovision unit, White Dragon Ling. By the looks of it, she doesn't seem to be a Neovision Awakened unit, which means it's time to face those Lings in your inventory and finally set them aside. Her base form is another supporter and debuffer, while her second form switches the debuffs for physical damage. She also boasts a true Brave Shift, with abilities that revolve around morale. They gave further details in the livestream. She's a fire and light supporter, which would certainly run into some very strong competition. But she does supply killer effects and chaining abilities, which can set her apart. We can also get a sneak peek at her actual kit. Transcendent Performance looks to be an encompassing support ability with different levels of mitigation effects, and this one just straight up fills a morale gauge. This is a bit concerning, as it'd likely be useless in other battles, much like the break gauge abilities, so hopefully they give her a lot of other abilities to make her more balanced. Her second form seems skilled to face off against human-type enemies, and there aren't any actual damaging abilities shown here either. Finally, the original Elena receives a Neovision Awakening. She goes from a hybrid damage dealer to a straight-up support. Her offensive options in her base form will be directed towards ice and light damage, and her stats will apparently be raised properly. She also finds use in morale battles as well, giving players an accessible option if they recently got her. If you still need to awaken her, they'll provide the materials in a future event. Her ultimate damage output will be a point of contention. We currently only have 2 Neovision hybrid damage dealers, and while we obviously expect her to surpass the Neovision Awakened units, it's a question of how strong. Stronger than Starlight Elena, and people will get upset with that for whatever reason. But weaker than Starlight Elena, and people will be disappointed with that. It's not a good situation, so hopefully her support abilities will make up for this. Elena's Trustmaster reward will also be improved, though it's still limited to either Elena. Her kit details are a bit disappointing, as they're so skewed towards morale that it makes me worried what you use her for outside of it. This reflects a previous point I made. Create a problem, sell the solution. If you're not happy with these 3 units, the developers have put forth another popularity poll featuring global original units. The winner will get a fresh new design as an entirely new unit in 2022. Glaring omissions are Elena, which is understandable, and Esther, which is strange, especially considering Sylvie's still eligible. Ryevia is also missing, but her dad's there. But regardless, Riser's not here, so I don't really care. But if enough people vote, we'll also get more awards, so I guess I want to see... Who has the most potential for an awesome design? Roberta. I want to see the dragon grow. Or Chow. Make the good boy into a gooder boy. Or White Knight Noel. What can you possibly do with this? Then they had some minigame reward, weird picture out of context. Then they teased out Final Fantasy VII Remake, because no one's been talking about that at all. The content creators beat their opponents so everyone gets to summon. They reminded us of all the rewards they released today, thank goodness I was about to feel ungrateful. And then we get some cool summons, but I expect the best ones will cost money. Unfortunately for me. So, overall, how'd it go? Well, we got free stuff. 10,000 Lapis, some summoning banners, and a handful of tickets and materials. Which pales in comparison to Japan's 50,000 Lapis gift among other items, just saying. There are a few missing elements that have been included in the previous anniversary livestream too. Veteran awards, gifts based on loyalty, are practically non-existent. And then there are several other issues that went unaddressed, like missing events or bugs. For me, the worst thing is that they lacked a roadmap, something that gave an outline of their future goals, no matter how big it could look. Clash of Wills looked incredibly interesting, but I'm a bit worried about the amount of units that directly have a role in morale battles. The system's fangs are becoming even more predatory towards players, in a very concerning matter to boot. Dark Visions featured an emphasis on elemental burst damage, but that could be used in other content too. Break gauge mechanics were incredibly niche, But at least they were generously scattered and weren't given too much emphasis. If they follow this trend, it should be fine. Giving an advantage to certain units is understandable, but give them too much focus and it becomes unbearable. So how will Final Fantasy Brave Exvius deliver? Will it deliver on its initial premise of shine and substance, or is it merely a facade, giving way to embarrassing disappointment? Not helping.